Okay, so next up we have Colin, who's going to tell us about the newly set up ABBA hackerspace.
Not entirely set up. And there's also Joe helping as well.
Joe,
Hi. So this is actually kind of a follow-up talk on a talk I did a year ago almost, when I introduced the idea of trying to have a... the audio? Right, so a year ago almost, I presented a talk at another BCS show and tell event on the idea of having a hackerspace here in ABBA. Since then, we've made a little bit of progress, maybe not as much as we first hoped. There was a huge burst of enthusiasm just after that meeting, and then it somewhat died down after then. So it was 1 year ago, I did the talk. Today, I'm going to give you an update on what progress we made, and we are almost at the stage now where we're going to start getting members in and start looking actually for a serious space that we can house this in. Even without having a space to actually house this in, we do at least hope to start getting some events up and running. Anyone here not know what hackerspace is? Really, Roger? Weren't you at my talk a year ago? It's basically a space where people can come and work on technologically focused projects of their choosing, hack on them if you want to use that name. This is Wikipedia's definition that a hackerspace or hack lab or makerspace is a community-operated physical space where people with common interests, often in computers, technology, science, digital art, electronic art, can meet, socialize, and/or collaborate. So since last year, we set up a Facebook group just before the BCS presentation, and we got a large number of members. About 130 have joined so far. A few seem to have left in frustration that nothing's happened yet. We had an initial meeting that was very productive actually in October with about 10 or so potential members. We decided at that point that we were going to call ourselves ABBA Lab because we were worried that some landlords or insurance companies might not like the name hackerspace with some of the negative connotations the word hacker may have, despite recent attempts to reclaim that term. But we've got a sort of tagline of the ABBA with hackerspace. And there is a debate as to whether we're hackerspace or hackspace. Some prefer hack, some prefer hacker. We've also talked to quite a few other spaces. One of our other members, or founding members, is actually very good friends with someone who's started the Leicester space, and she has sent us a huge document explaining some of the processes they went through and some of the difficulties they've had. Last year, I had the chance to visit 091 Labs in Galway in Ireland, and a former student of ours is actually a very active member of that, and that was a very impressive space. One of our other co-founders has actually got a brother who is one of the founders of the Swansea Hackspace, and they've got now a very nice site above Tech Hub right in the centre of Swansea. I also managed to talk to some representatives of Reading and Oxford at a conference last year and talked about how they got going and kept things going. And actually, as of, I think, was it last week?
Possibly.
We are now officially incorporated as a company by limited guarantee, which actually allows us to go off and start negotiating with people like landlords and trying to get somewhere to actually put ourselves, and also getting hold of a bank account so we can start taking money off people. We have a very basic initial website with a wiki with some vague ideas on it. So if anyone wants to visit that page, the last slash after wiki is very important.
Oh, no, it's fixed now.
Oh, okay, brilliant. Has been for about the last 3 months. So what next? We're actually in the process of trying to set up a bank account so we can take money in. Apparently, this can actually take a few weeks to set up a community bank account. And then we might actually be able to start signing up members properly, taking their money, and then using that money to run events and actually get hold of a space. Just to give you a very brief structure of how we've set it up, we're actually a company by limited guarantee, which means if the company goes bust, each of the people who guarantee it have to pay a sum of £1. This protects us somewhat if there's any liability issues and the whole thing does end. Some of the hack spaces actually don't go down this route and actually just run themselves off the back of their members, but that means those members are personally liable for everything that happens. And the Galway space had set themselves up that way. I felt that was a little bit dangerous to do, and this is the recommended route that many other places have taken. Unfortunately, there's a bit of bureaucracy involved, which is partly why things have taken so long. So we've currently got 4 trustees, and we may in the future have elections to change these trustees, but these are myself, Joe here, Daniel Clark, who's presented, I think, some of these previously, who's a member of the ABBA Sailbot team, and Joanna Harvey, who is a homeschooling mum who's come to an awful lot of events in the university and is very keen to use this space for home education. Now, the trustees are not the sole organisers of this. We need members to join us and help push events. We are just there to basically oversee that everything that happens within the law, and that we meet our legal obligations. So do not expect the 4 trustees to organise and run everything. That is where all of you come in as members, hopefully, in future, to actually get things going and come and bring projects along and do things. Just a brief breakdown of how we expect to fund this and how much it's going to cost us. We think our running costs are going to be around about £850 a month to get a reasonably sized place. And I'll talk in a couple of slides' time about some of the spaces we're currently looking at having. This is a back of the envelope calculation. We may have missed a few things out, but we're working with the assumption that rent's about £650 a month, and that's our biggest expense. So to do that, we need a bunch of members. Now, we did put a poll up last year asking who would pay what on our Facebook page. And I think the only options we actually gave were £2, £5, £10, and £20 a month, or was nothing on there?
I think nothing was on there.
I don't think anyone actually ticked nothing. So the majority put £10 a month, and just the poll around the room. How many of you would be willing to pay £10 a month to join something like this? Anyone willing to pay more than that? Anyone not able to pay £10 a month? Anyone not interested in joining? Okay, 2. So we reckon that based on our previous poll, we had 40 people fill that out. That would only give us £450 a month. So obviously there's a bit of a gap there, but we've got 130 people in the Facebook group and 40 filled out the poll. I don't know if that means that only 40 bothered to fill out the poll, which was pinned as the top post for a few months, or if it means we might actually get a bit more than that. But obviously we do need to grow and find some other sources of funding if we're going to achieve this. So our current plan is to charge a minimum of £5 per month, but above that's going to pay what you can or what you feel it's worth model. Suggestion of 15 or maybe £10 a month, and an academic membership for students, so that students who aren't here over the summer aren't paying us over the summer. Or if they do want to pay us over the summer, that would really help with cash flow. We've been looking at how we might actually take the money. So one option is a system called Goad Cardless that sets up direct debits. Another is just running a standard off people's bank accounts. We would prefer to avoid cash, and PayPal has got a reputation for sitting on people's money and taking very long times to pay it when suspiciously large amounts come in. There is actually a website, something, conferences killed by PayPal on Tumblr, with conferences who've had their money lost due to using PayPal. But just out of interest in another audience question, is there anyone here who wouldn't be able to use one of those payment methods? We were just wondering about any foreign students, especially, who don't have a UK bank account. Good, nobody. So what's the sample size here? 40, 30? We've also talked to some other places about how they make money. The Galway place actually had a tuck shop selling just chocolate bars and drinks, and these were just on a shelf, and people just put money into a box, and they said that makes about 1/3 of their income.
So that's a lot of money.
Yeah. So actually, members get hungry while they're on their late night hacking projects. Yes, Hannah?
The London Hack Space imports some South American drink that's really caffeinated.
That's a good idea.
Is it mate? It's a mate-based drink.
I think I've heard of it, yeah.
It's really popular.
Yeah, John Cola would be the other one, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think in Galway, they were running around a 20–30% markup, and the members got hungry on their late night hacking sessions and would spend €2 or €3 each day they were in there on chocolate and drink. And despite there being a corner shop just around the corner. We've also talked about the idea of having a vending machine that sells electronic components. If we maybe had Raspberry Pis and Arduinos in there, you've got students whose Raspberry Pi blows up 10 minutes before their demo, they run over to the hack space, buy a new one in the vending machine. Or you want to use a new project, you get one out of the vending machine. We've also talked about the idea of running short-term room rentals. If someone wants a room they can work in for a few days for a small business project or an art project or something, maybe we can offer space for that, or just simple hot desking. Perhaps we could run some events that are charged for, especially for non-members. If you get an event where 20 or 30 people come and they each pay £5, that's actually a significant contribution to our monthly costs. And maybe there's some grants we could apply for as well as sort of community interest and education. So a couple of possible locations we've looked at. There are 2 units that have been available for some time now on the Science Park, Unit 6D and 6G. Which one of them?
6D, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, 6D.
So that they're a certain possibility. I think they're about 5,000 a year, but we're not quite sure if VAT is then chargeable on top of that. But they would be reasonable to get started in at the very least.
Now.
What?
Who owns them currently?
Raw Reese is offering to rent them. I don't know who actually owns them. There is also a unit available on the industrial estate that's somewhat bigger, but it's a bit far out of town, and I think that might be too far for many people to get to. There are a few shops that are empty around town centre. I don't know if a shop can actually be rezoned to do something like this, and I'm not sure the council know what a hack space is in terms of zoning categories. And there is also the possibility that the university may offer us some space. Negotiations are sort of ongoing on that one. So actually doing some real stuff and getting some nice projects going. We're thinking maybe running some courses on soldering, basic electronics, Arduino programming, getting projects going, and really this is where the members come in. The projects that happen could be anything the members propose and members want to work on. We'd like to involve as diverse a group as possible, anyone who really wants to use the space and has a general interest in these areas. So I think the home educators group are really keen to do that, and they might well use the space during the day when we'd less like to see student and university involvement. There is quite a large model aircraft community in Aber, as I'm sure Neil can tell us, who maybe want to come and repair their model aircraft with somewhere with a few more facilities than they've got at home. If their spouses don't like them using up the whole kitchen to fix their planes or something. Same from radio amateurs. There's quite a large group of radio amateurs in Aber. Perhaps artists would like a space they can use, especially in the short term, without having to rent a studio. Anything else, we're certainly open to suggestions. And we don't feel we actually need a space to start going. Maybe we should start just organising a weekly hack night. This is how Swansea certainly started going. And they just got a room in a pub once a week and ran an event in the pub. Although the biggest problem we have is we're competing with all the other clubs and societies out there for finding a spare night. Now, I think the biggest motivator for getting this going is that Bangor are actually doing it, and they may be doing a better job than us right now. And nothing seems to motivate this university more than competition with Bangor. Swansea are also doing a very good job of it, and I think our next competition motivator is knowing that Swansea are doing a good job at something. So I'm sure if Bangor and Swansea can do it, we can certainly do it. So if you want to help, the Facebook group link is there. It's just Aber Hackspace on Facebook, or search for Aber Lab is our title now. We do have Twitter and Facebook pages as well, where we're putting out information about what we're up to. We don't officially have a member sign-up process yet. Hopefully in the next few weeks, we will post on all our social media links as soon as we do. And anyone who has anything that they want to get going and projects they want to run, please let us know. We could really do with some help, especially from the artsy people here, to design a logo. We had a bit of a logo design competition last year, and no one was happy with all the logos we came up with. So if anyone is good at logo design, we could really do with your help right now. And in a year's time, we've got to file our first set of annual accounts. We could do with a friendly accountant in a year's time who doesn't charge too much or wants free membership maybe in exchange for doing some accounts. I think that's it. Yeah. Any questions?
Probably a flash by quickly. Did you buy an insurance into your cost?
Yes. And that was the cost was based on what some other spaces have been quoted. Insurance is actually an odd one. The costs seem to vary dramatically from what one space to another is quoted. And some have just got general liability policies that seem to cover them. Others have gone down very specific routes and then been given horrendous insurance quotes. Is when they realise what you might actually be doing. Yeah.
So if I pay £10 a month, does that give me complete access to everything?
Yes.
So for example, if I need to use kilojoules worth of electricity.
Yeah.
Okay.
You would have to have some appliance that uses them. And obviously we would aim to buy things like soldering irons, basic hand tools, and maybe as we get more money, building up to more sophisticated equipment, perhaps things like laser cutters or CNC machines, if we ever get to that kind of money. And your membership fee would gain you access to whatever we have available.
I'm sure if our electricity bill went up significantly, we might be having talks.
I know a lot of other spaces also, they get to the point where they run out of money and they literally put out a post to all their members saying, we need this amount to get us through the next month. please donate here, and they create some kind of donation system. And usually money does come in because people don't want to see the space shut down. Yes?
I've been talking to a guy about, so he's talking about sort of desk space or office for stuff like that, for people who want to set up, occasional workspace.
Yeah.
So I've been talking to a guy who runs IndieCube, and they've set up different places across Wales.
Yeah, we've heard from them as well, actually.
Ah, have you? Okay, good. Because they might be worth kind of doing both together.
Yeah, and Swansea's one is based in Tech Hub, which is basically a hot desk skiing startup incubator place. So actually downstairs is all the hot desks for Tech Hub, and upstairs is the hackspace.
Yeah. So the guy's coming up at the end of the month.
Okay.
So if you want to meet him,
Yep, definitely. No one else? Thanks.
So next up we have James, who's going to discuss some work he's done for his dissertation.
I'm actually not discussing my dissertation, I'm discussing part of it. Back in November, I started looking into functional reactive programming, and I was I wanted to look more into it. So I decided to put it in my dissertation. So I ended up building a functional reactive game engine, but I'm not going to be talking about the game engine component. I'm just going to be talking about the functional reactive programming part. Does anybody know functional reactive programming? Does anybody know reactive programming at all? Okay, so I mean, you all know programming, right? Or half of you, yeah, at least. Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's a good start there. Okay, so functional reactive programming is a bit iffy because it's very broad. Lots of different implementations. They are discussed in completely different ways to each other. Functional reactive programming was originally from about 97, but some of the implementations I've looked at are much more recent. One of the biggest implementations is Reactive Extensions, which actually built into C# and .NET 4 onwards, and that was built by a guy called Eric Meyer. That isn't really functional reactive programming. It doesn't really call itself that, but it's close enough to have people be confused and end up talking about reactive extensions as functional reactive programming a lot. Netflix actually did a port of reactive extensions into Java, and they use it for a lot of their web stuff. As well as that, there are some, the original roots of functional reactive programming is in Haskell. That's when it was all done. And people recently took it from Haskell and put it elsewhere. But this logo here is from a library called Reactive Banana, which I quite like the logo for. I didn't really look into Haskell because I'm not a functional programmer, and I don't know really too much about functional programming. Well, before I started this, now a little bit, but still not a huge amount. I ended up using a library called Sodium FRP for my game engine, which I really liked because it's a really small library. The implementation's in 700 lines of code. So if you're going into functional reactive programming new, it's really good to start because you can learn really quickly and end up making something useful quicker. And the best thing about this is the author actually implemented it in different languages. So there's a C++ implementation and a Java and a Haskell implementation for this one library, and it all does the same stuff. So you can actually talk to other people about this library, like here, and actually for them to be able to go and play with it in their own language that they prefer. So I thought it was a really good one. But all these libraries and all these implementations looked at the two key details that all of them have is behaviors, sometimes called signals, and then events or streams. And these are two things that functional reactive programming require for it to be functional reactive programming. The language varies, and like the Sodium FRP, the one I use, it actually calls them streams and cells, and the cells is a bit weird. That's just for the Java implementation, but I think that was because of conflicting in terms of like namespace. But in terms of behaviors and streams, the two authors of the original paper, where the FRP term was coined, actually used this to define it. And it's very wordy, and recently this kind of definition actually been lost. When people talk about functional reactive programming, they don't mean this, but this is the original definition. And Colonel Alex over here actually has said that he regrets using functional reactive programming as a term because people are so widely misusing it. And quite funny, actually, there's this case where there was this Twitter discussion going on, and Kernel-Alex actually tweeted saying that things like reactive extensions aren't really FRP, but like FRP inspired. And then lots of different libraries that call themselves FRP then change the definition from FRP to FRP inspired, which I find that really funny because they realize that they got it wrong. But why should you care about FRP? Functional record programming, from what I've seen, is actually becoming really big and really popular. And the reason why is because it's very, very powerful at doing some things, like ridiculously good. One person who made an implementation of this themselves in C++ for a project, they were working on a robot, an industrial arm, where they had to have like 6 degrees of freedom. I can't remember the details of the project. But there was like a last-minute change in one of the things they had to do for the project, and they managed to change it in a few hours. It was like they needed the robot arm to be nudged by a human operator and then stay nudged out of position for the entire like duration of whatever it was doing. And think how hard that would be to implement in like imperative programming. Like that took just a few hours to do because of how functional record programming works. What it's particularly good at is handling inputs, which is the example I provide in the next slides. But it can also do really complex interactions for like game engines. When, say, on Xbox, you have like an achievement, you need to be able to program it so when you do something like a triple barrel roll, you need to be able to tell all the different parts of the system, oh yeah, by the way, this condition is being met. So you now need to like draw it on the screen. You need to also then tell the Xbox that you've got this achievement. You have to do all these things. That's a really complicated thing to do. But like FRP makes it easy. Like currently with existing game engines, they use something called observers and observables to be able to do this. And FRP is kind of like the more abstract, higher level like observer and observables, and it's much better from what I can tell. Okay, so the idea of behaviors and events. This top line here, this is like a logic. There's some logic that I need to implement in my game. But I want the character to move to the right when I hit the right arrow key, and then the actual event would be the right arrow key being pressed, and the behavior would be the arrow key. It would not actually be the same as the logic up here, but it would be that the pressing the right arrow key maps to a movement of 1 in a certain direction. So it seems like they're very close, but they're technically not. And as you can see here, this is the actual implementation. I'm not sure if you can see that clearly. This is how I actually implemented it in my game engine. Using sodium FRP, there's things you can do on the stream, which is the event stream. You call filter and map. Up here at the top, you got the key event stream. So anytime I hit any key, maybe not on this laptop, but on like my laptop, any keys I would press, it would trigger the event, and then it goes to the filter. But anything that was defined from the FRP keyboard.key event, anything defined from that, it will all be triggered automatically, like self-propagating. And then it will reach the filter, and if it passes the filter, it will continue. But so for this case, as long as the key pressed is an arrow key, and as long as the key event is any key event that isn't released, because when you press a key, when you press the key is a key press, and then when you hold it down, it's a key held event. This is just how one of the components of my game engine works. But anything that is those, it will then continue to map, and it will take the right, left, up, down keys and map them into movements. And so this is the actual behavior kind of abstract, where you can actually reuse this in different parts of the game engine many different times. The actual
You call that once. You call that function once.
Only once when you define it
At the setup.
at setup.
Right.
Yeah, and the actual when you call it here, this function here, queue behavior. If you were to say player's position equals a queue behavior, that would be the player's position forever. For the entire time the application is running, you would never have to call function again. It all self-propagates on the key event. The only code you call is key event.send, which you can see here. So when you send the key event, it will go down this defined pipework until it gets to pretend the right arrow key is 11. It's not, but this is just some graphic I had. But it will just go down here until it gets to the actual position of the object, and then it will just automatically update it. For particular details, this is actually called a push-based FRP system. There are lots of different types. I'm not going to go into it. The push base is what most FRP implementations are. So you actually tell it and it will update it. Even if you're not using the position for some reason, it will still update it.
It's like a spreadsheet.
Like a spreadsheet, yeah, exactly. That's actually an example some people use in talks. It's just like a spreadsheet works. But it's, as you can see, like those lines of code is all the lines of code for the movement. There is nothing more than that. The top one here is a queue. So when you hit it, it will actually keep the previous position and update to it. Where this bottom one here would actually just replace it, because if you hit the right arrow key, it will just be as it moved to the right, and then if you hit left, it would like ignore anything else that had previously existed and just give it the thing it already that you just told it. But no, yeah, this is very useful stuff. And I should probably say that anybody who knows Java, this here is a Lambda expression, which is available in Java 6 onwards, and it's basically just a function. You're passing around functions. This is the functional programming part of it. Yeah, this actually took me a little bit to get used to, and now I'm so used to it, I forgot, like, people might not actually know about that. It's actually a really good way of programming this. I actually program like this for everything now. Like anything I can use to like be programmed this way, I program this way. It's so good. You should all program like this. And so, like, one of the key things you really take away from this is like, functional reactive programming is really, really, really good, really powerful tool for some things, and you should have it in your toolbox. Like this functional reactive programming is the screwdriver, where imperative programming is a hammer. Like you can't just use a hammer for all problems. Like this is much better suited for some problems. So you should really learn this. And also, if you do decide to learn it, you have to be careful, because all the languages, all the talks, all the different kind of blog posts that people talk about, all very different. And if you go try to learn it from Colonel Elliot, like you have to have a degree in mathematics or something, because it's ridiculous. I just don't understand half the stuff he's talking about, because people from functional programming world are just like really mathematically heavy. That's too much for me. But no, that's basically it. Okay, thanks. Any questions? No? Questions?
I'm just going to be cheeky and say, when can you come and work for us?
I don't?
Oh, yeah, well, actually, you might have noticed that this free one in that row here, we were whispering about abstract state machines.
Abstract state machines?
Yes. Do any functional reactive programming ever talk about them?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. When it comes to functional reactive programming, like pure functional reactive programming, usually they try to say state is really bad, anything to do with state is bad, and they try to do purely like what you would do in Haskell, is where you, actually with my code examples, you can see that all the dark purple is technically global state. I mean, some of it you can kind of cheat, like this here is actually just a constant, so this is always the same, so it would still count. But this function actually is purely functional. This one here, but when you get to this point, when you're doing the queue, it's no longer functional as some of the people would describe it. It's now cheating. It's now doing something called a side effect, which is when you have yeah. So I'm not entirely sure about your question specifically. I have to look into it some more.
Curious because Neil came to something not dissimilar from the point of view of automotive analysis and simulations, and I came out from the telecom side. And so, in essence, if we were to design a reactive system, then I want to make a reactive system some kind of response to an input from the environment, to multiple inputs from various parts of the environment. I draw pictures, and pictures actually have a formal definition, and from the C++ or whatever gets generated.
Okay. So you've implemented something like functional programming by mistake.
Sort of. It's not. The functional bit is another story, because technically it's compiled into the sphere.
Okay.
And this office is a Java function.
A lot of people do say that if you work hard enough, you would come up with this on your own, because this is like the solution to a lot of problems people have. And this is why when I started working with it, I was really happy, because I saw that.
That's what I was going to say. Is the abstract state machines are really a mathematical model for systems that have lots of independent agents responding to events and sending signals to one another.
We ended up with it because effectively if you're modeling lots of components on a circuit, and all those components are independently interacting functional pieces, but you join them together with wires. And so they're all concurrently processing their own individual inputs and outputs, which is kind of similar to
Not really miles.
Not really miles.
The sodium methyl library actually has a C implementation for Objective-C. So if you were interested in this, you could have a look at that. I'm not entirely sure about your kind of work there. I haven't really worked with that specifically. So
is that more of a sort of formal methods approach?
Well, yes, probably. It's, I mean, I'm actually thinking very much of a company called produces several pieces of software for doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot. I worked at Mascot back in the day.
Yeah, well, Mascot would be an ancestor of the sort of thing.
It's the whole idea of data flows between, you know, buckets.
well, one definition is asynchronous data flows, which is more the kind of reactive extensions thing.
Yeah.
But the formal definition doesn't actually talk about asynchronous data flows at all.
I want to do it right now. And we can have an offline discussion.
Any more questions?
Can you go back to the original definition? Because
Yes. Well, I actually
it threw me. How can a behaviour be a value?
well, functions of first-class citizens. First, I just want to clarify. Kernel edits originally said behaviors are time varying, and then in a later paper, Paul had it expanded to the full statement.
Right.
So they're, even though they're both kind of involved in most of the papers, some of them wrote papers about the other, and this definition came from him in a later paper.
Okay.
Jim, the answer is von Neumann.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, well, in terms of this, I actually wrote a slide that explained this, but I decided to delete it because I thought it'd be too technical. But it was
The slide to explain it was too technical.
I thought it was too technical. What I actually, the way I understand this here is well, in terms of the time varying component of it, is that in functional programming, like functions don't really have a value at a time. They have a value for a time. So if you have like a pipeline of stuff like this, and you pass in, say, like 1,000, every single time you pass in 1,000, it always return the same thing. So as like the behavior has a value for 1,000, so it doesn't actually have a value in memory at any point. It's the value is defined by the structure of it. So when
it's called at that particular time when it gets called.
So yeah, so, not at a particular time. It's time independent. It's so that's the thing, which is the formal definition is really confusing about. The behaviors kind of are just like you define how code works and you say, hey, take this, and then and you just pass a value and it just gives you the same thing every time. But then the event streams are discrete timed, so it's kind of they're both kind of opposite to each other, and it gets really technical. I'm actually you're really interested. You can read my dissertation when I finish it.
Yeah.
So
or sit down and have a chat with it.
all that. So, any more questions?
Just following what Dale says, a lot of robotics frameworks also have a striking resemblance to what you described.
Yeah, this is exploding. Everyone everywhere is using it.
Well, it's quite like Brooks's subsumption architecture.
Yeah,
which is from 1986. So
Ratenberg vehicles.
Right, yeah.
The most principal, or more concrete, is actually the array library we're using time error.
Yeah.
And any more questions? Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
So next up we have Adele, who's going to be talking about the Mark II lily pad hat.
It's actually responding to an accelerometer, but I don't know much about accelerometers, so it's not actually making much sense at the moment. That might make it as one. We'll see. Anyway, so what it's really about is it's really all about the sewing.
Oh yeah. don't look at my card.
Oh, what's that done? Oh, there we are. There we go.
Oh, that's so much nicer.
So that's a picture of the hat all sewn up. And what I really want to talk about tonight is about this conductive thread and the uses thereof. So there's a little picture there of a lily pad and some LEDs and a battery holder thingy and various bits of stitching.
And just here, there's a kludge. I'll come back to that afterwards. How do I get the next picture on this thing?
You have to click back to the finder.
Oh dear, that's tedious. Oh dear, 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 dear. Yeah, okay, that's what I really want is. Ah, so down in the corner. On the top row. That's what I want. Thank you. Ah, this looks good. Now, will an arrow do it or a double click? Ah, okay, that's more like it. Yeah, that'll do nicely. Now, right, so that's a picture of a sewing box. And you need a sewing box if you're going to sew. I don't solder, but I do sew.
What's the scale of that? What's the radius? Is it a mile?
I actually have the box with me. I thought it was going to be a bit more like the ones down the other place, so I brought all the gear here. But never mind, you can have a look at it if you like. But I've got a sewing box, and it looks like that. And if I take the lid off the sewing box,
Well, now you can clearly see the skirt, can't you?
Cotton reels might be cool.
yeah, so in there you can see various messy bits and various sharp items. You've got to be careful if you rummage in my sewing box.
Whoa.
But I've rather carefully positioned on the top a set of crewel needles. Now, crewel needles are absolutely vital if you want to sew with conductive thread. Here's a close-up of the crewel needles. They're not cruel as in mean and nasty, although they would give you a nasty spike if you let them. But they're cruel spelt like jewel. And what it means is that they've got relatively slender bodies and big eyes. And there's a reason for this. They were designed many, many years ago for embroidery. So I first started using crewel needles at the age of 9 or thereabouts, when in school it was decreed that we were about ready to start embroidery. I came up in an era where girls learned sewing. And as you see with those, they've got nice big eyes, and this is important because the conductive thread is quite thick. Now, it doesn't like going through the eye of a needle, but a crewel needle is the right needle for the job. So that's a picture of the inside of Hannah's box of tricks, which she very kindly lent me. And this goes back to about this time last year when we were in this very room, and somebody showed a nice video of some lily pad things. And my daughter, Anna, was absolutely intrigued by them because she's interested in them from the point of view of their dramatic potential. And she said, oh, that'd be great to look at. And Hannah said, would you like to borrow my stuff for a bit? And we borrowed Hannah's stuff for quite a long time. And Anna, my daughter, got to write her very first program ever. And she made the lights chase each other around the hat. Hannah had the Mark I hat. And meanwhile, I got on with making the Mark II hat. Now, when we're looking at sewing with this conductive thread, there are several different kinds of challenge. The first one is actually getting the connections to connect. So the lily pad, as you see, has these nice little tabs, and each of those is a pin, except it's not pin-shaped. You're supposed to be able to sew through it. If you look at that picture, you'll see a nice little line of blue all around the lily pad. You've got a nice little line of blue all around the lily pad. That's actually plain, ordinary sewing thread. No conductivity, or that would be a disaster, because I connected them all together, just for sewing it. And I've sewn the lily pad onto the hat, just as if the lily pad were a button of something. As well as using the non-conductive threads to do that, it was quite important that I left enough space on the tabs to sew the conductive thread to it. So anyway, I secured the lily pad itself to the hat nicely, because this was actually a modification to the Mark I hat. The Mark I hat followed the practice illustrated on the online tutorials and used the conductive connections to attach the lily pad to the underlying fabric. That was kind of okay, but it's not very secure. So this one is a bit more secure. Likewise, I sewed the battery holder and various other bits into place with just plain ordinary thread, but all the time trying to leave space to make the connections. Battery holder was a challenge from that point of view, because there wasn't any really good way of sewing, leaving a good space for the connections, but I sort of managed it. What else? You'll notice a lot of herringbone stitching there. I'll come back to that later. And you'll see right here in the corner that I have a crossover bit. That was kind of probably to do with not very good planning in the first place, or possibly to do with a genuine topological problem. But in any event, I have these connections from 9 and 11 having to crisscross the plus battery. But that's okay. It wasn't really a problem, because I just went under at this point here and over again. And this is what it looks like inside the hat. So those little stitches inside the hat show approximately what it's like. Now, I was taking advantage of the fact that the hat fabric is fairly, as actually a double layer. So as long as I was careful from the top knot, I had absolutely clear layer underneath. And those two stitches are the kind of big loose stitches that are recommended in the online tutorials. More components. That's an accelerometer. I said I don't really know much about accelerometers, and I'm finding out by trial and error some of what doesn't work. Again, the blue thread is plain old thread, no conductivity, securing the accelerometer so that it at least is relatively stable with respect to the hat.
And that's
on the top. And the three the X, Y, and Z, and the plus and minus coming off. So there's quite a lot of connections to make to that. There's another point about this. Now, I said that one of the challenges was kind of fray edges. So one of the steps I took there was I made a principle of making sure that the end of a piece of conductive thread was at a reasonably decent distance from any connector. So the end of the conductive thread is actually lurking in this lot somehow. And I also said to myself, well, now, if I were working with wires and I wasn't soldering them, I'd probably be wire wrapping them. So what I've done is stitch, 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 stitch really carefully to bind in the loose end. So everything's really bound in there. And that avoids nasty things like having the end of this thread accidentally flopping over onto the neighboring pin. And there's an LED. That one, I needed a little bit of care in securing it to the hat in the first instance. So the blue thread again, here, 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 and here, is actually sewn in an X underneath the LED. The other thing I found with those LEDs was that I really had to choose my needle carefully, because the holes in them are titch. And getting a needle that will both take the conductive thread and go through the eye of the LED is, again, a challenge, but was met by my trusty collection of quill needles. Another challenge that I haven't actually mentioned yet was the material the hat is made of is stretchy, well, because hats are meant to be that stretchy. So, for instance, I have to be able to, I don't know, give it a good stretch like that without breaking the thread. It's a bit less demanding in this direction. So for the up and down direction, you can see I'm just going wind, 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 wind. But for the direction across the ribbing, I'm using a stitch called herringbone, which I originally learned in the context of learning to sew hems on things like tweed skirts. another LED. And here's a nice close-up of some of the herringbone stitching. So you see, for each stitch is actually done by having the needle facing in the opposite direction to the way that I want to go. Let me see which way would that have been done. That would have been done the other way up. That's actually the right way up to the hat, but upside down from the point of view of the sewing. But yeah, so that's herringbone stitch. Extremely useful and stretchy. And now, back to the first picture again. I did mention that, oh, where's my first picture gone? It's gone. Oh, never mind. Is that it behind? That's it behind. Lovely. Okay, so I mentioned that this little thing here was a kludge. And that's because something sad happened when I was trying it out. The little sad thing that happened was that pin 2 that I had used to supply that LED there doesn't seem to be putting out the correct voltage. At first I thought I'd done something wrong with my sewing and my connections were inadequate. You get that kind of problem when you've got inadequate connections. But I took some of Hannah's trusty crocodile clips and I checked across from some of these pins, connecting one of these straight across to here, changing the program to send the high to one of these, and lo and behold, the LED lit up beautifully. So then I knew it wasn't my sewing. So what I did this morning was just bodged in a little bit of conductive thread to pin 7, and then sent it into the inside of the hat. And you can see it's just it was a piece of thread that I'd unpicked from another piece that I'd done wrongly previously. And so I've just looped it in through there, brought it up the other side, and so I have now connected pin 7 across to pin 2. So when I want pin 2, I send to pin 7 instead, and that seems to be just fine. So that's the story of sewing the hat. That kind of works. I actually brought along my computer so that in case if there was time, someone could have a go at programming it. And I've got nice things like Anna's nice little program that makes the lights chase. This is supposed to do something halfway sensible with the accelerometer, and it is responding to it, but as I say, in slightly arbitrary ways. Now that should make that work. If I don't like that, we can let some of the others will do something. That'll be it. It's too laggy for that. I've got too much. Yeah. If I do that, the tilt should make it respond a lot. And it should do two opposites and two opposites depending on what's happening. So there we are. But what this is really all about is that everybody I know who's been playing with these things has had hell with the sewing. And I thought to myself, maybe if I can find out a few ideas about how to sew these things so they work and apply them, that would be worth doing.
Yeah, I also had trouble with stretchiness because that's a tiny glove.
Yeah.
And as soon as I put it on, I just did big, long loops.
That's what it says in the tutorials.
Yeah,
but
the herringbone looks
when
a
I
lot
saw
nicer.
that, I said to myself, I didn't much like sewing in school. I wasn't awfully good at it. You see, there's a certain unevenness to my stitching.
Oh.
But
Compared to mine.
I thought to myself, well, people went to the trouble of teaching me sewing for 10 years. Maybe I could apply it to something. So I quite like sewing these things. So that's the end of that. Now all I need is to get Jim to program it so the accelerometer behaves sensibly.
So for those of you who have been to a show and tell before now, you'll know that there's always a prize for a winner. Now Nick has created some tokens for us to give to whoever you think has done the best presentation today. So if you're all like, grab a token, and there's also a register on that desk if you would also like to sign and register. Nick hasn't created the tokens yet, he's now doing it.
Oh, I see, the
We did-
small
we
pieces of
got the
paper.
stickers.
Okay. I've used that. Yeah, well, just told them. Oh, I see.
You give them, sorry.
Give them to people. Stick them behind your ear.
I think it'd be a good idea to.
If you manage to stick them to you, then.
You can vote yourself if you wish. No, no, really. There's more to
Don't tell our town that we ripped up their farm.
I thought one of my
Literally just hold it. If you get one, hold one. Yes. Yeah, and get it there when you got it. In the bag ready. Oh, thank you. Very professional.
Yeah. I thought we hadn't seen. I don't know. I just thought.
Hello, who's collecting it? You are.
It must be.
Keep saying guys.
It's not me.
I do. How much is there?
It's actually not useful.
This one does, but it comes like this. I'm hoping that's got the new soft running.
I checked online, they haven't released the new software or something. There was some, they've run out of stock of the SD. You could just get any SD card to download the software.
Yeah, soft sold free, yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
It's like I'm guessing millions of people are buying them.
Yeah.
In bulk and also
Yeah.
we've got a charger and a pipe and a crinkled box.
You know, with the,
Sure, that's because in the box.
yeah, but I don't think
Thank you very much indeed. Back to the piles while I've fun with that.
Okay.
After today, if you meant to maybe it's time to go to the next slide. Yeah, I see. Windows.
There's nothing wrong with Mac if you know how to use
The guy
Mac.
Mark who knows the guy.
No. Full price and actual usability when it comes to, well, you know,
But they were talking about
general
your
useful.
college. I was talking in touch with people about your
You know, you get these solid size memory section. Okay, plug into your computer. Full Chrome. Tell me what the Intel.
You haven't seen the prize, Jim. You don't want to win.
yeah, we don't.
Oh, Podcore. Is your Podcore? Oh, yeah, it's got high spec.
Sewing is.
My sewing is really, really fast.
I
When I try and sew stuff.
That's how I did the connections. The thing is by sewing. Yes. No. Sewing. Yeah.
Wires to.
Blue. Wires connected to connected. Also in thread.
So when you get fed up with sewing, just use
Yeah.
dollar glue.
Yeah. Yeah. Hot glue solves everything. It's like anti-WD-40 or gaffer tape in a gun.
Forge tokens.
Well, yeah, that's what I've got. That's what I've
Really? Who was the thing before? Is that
When I say it's more like a piping tube.
yeah. Is there a sign of the consistency of like tip, or is it like that?
Yeah, it is. Sort
Sticks
of.
onto the way.
It's really goofy.
Do you want to leave it?
It's more like paint, to be honest.
Love it.
Do you want me to take this off?
Yeah, sorry, I powered down the PC.
And yet more power can go. Oh, it's not going to like that much.
Take these tokens. Well, no, it's fine. It's about some of the discussion.
I'm going to have to do that.
What?
Yeah, you're back on
What is down the bottom? There. Oh.
No, there's you signed up, yeah.
Oh, well done. I didn't see much up there though.
I only have welcome. I can get rid of the word welcome. No.
Yeah,
I'll put the welcome sign up.
I think this is more successful.
Yeah, but like not people. They'll be wondering where the fingerprints are. I do just stuff in there that looks so.
What outside?
I'm going to do something useful.
Another great piece of technology.
Everything I make is out of blue happy on the back.
Everything I make is always a hack, a complete hack. I'm not good at finished products. But they have a certain charm.
Beyond a certain point, there's a lot of effort. I'm not much sure if I'm supposed to present really well organised people.
I think when the wire's on the outside, it's cool.
Yeah, it makes it look better anyway. It's boring if you can't see it. Yeah.
It's 9 o'clock.
It is 9 o'clock.
Is it? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll put the bag in the bag.
Nice toy, Jim. Well done.
Cheers.
Possibly not. Possibly not.
Pretty much all sorted out there. What do you do with the case of beer and some nuts and stuff? How do you do that?
Hand it back to Neil. Can we put it? Is
Oh,
Hannah
no,
still here?
I'll
Give it to Rodri.
Yeah.
It's not very much, it's an armful.
I'll put them in back.
I'll see you tomorrow lunchtime.
BCS poster.
I'll take that away.
And
Do you know how to collapse the phone thing? Not right.
Can we have all the presenters in the front?
Oh shit!
What have I told you about language?
Didn't have for you, did it? Is it got a condom?
Yeah. Well, it's got a box. It's quite a.
Richard condom. Brilliant, brilliant.
I'm sorry. You get a condom first.
Oh, to be sure, to be sure.
Condom is something good.
I think Jim will. Oh, the rigid condom. I have none.
Okay.
Listen, everybody, Helen's going to say something.
Have you spoken to all the speakers on?
None.
5.
2. 1. He needs someone to count them for him.
I've got anticipation to do.
Okay.
It's more than 5. You've won.
Thank you very much. Thank you. What have we got?
Another one for your collection.
I nearly ordered one of these. Oh, right. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Memory cards in the box.
Do you want to collect the tokens back?
They might be handy for next
Yesterday
time.
was yesterday. And it's ready made for tokens.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Did Jim win?
Yeah, Jim won.
What kind of question is that?
I guessed as much.
Yeah. I know there might have been.
What are your plans with your first week?